Hi, I'm Bill Bradley. Join me for a recent excerpt of American Voices. I'm Bill Bradley. We're back now on American Voices. My guest today is John Losey, an entomology professor at Cornell University. We're talking about the Lost Ladybug Project.
That's an Asian ladybug, and that is a 7-spot. Yeah, look over by the fennel. That's a plant that they really like.
Of all the insects there are in the world, perhaps the ladybug might be considered the cutest, the most endearing.
Ladybug, ladybug, fly away home. Your house is on fire and your children are gone. All but one, and her name is Anne. She hid under the frying pan.
My guest today is studying ladybugs, and he's asking for your help. Professor John Losey is an entomologist at Cornell University, and he's created the Lost Ladybug Project. The Lost Ladybug refers to the 9-spot ladybug. They used to be prevalent in New York, but not anymore. They're lost, so to speak. And so, to help with his scientific research on ladybugs, Professor Losey is asking people to take pictures of any ladybug they see. Upload the pictures to his website, lostladybug.org. Help science. Professor Losey, welcome to American Voices.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
What a great idea to get people involved. So do you agree with me there's something cute about a ladybug?
Absolutely. I think people in general have a really positive reaction, an affinity to ladybugs. And I think it's because unlike some, like say a spider or even other kinds of beetles maybe, they don't have really big pointy legs sticking out. They don't have big pointy antennae. They're just like these little circles, little spheres, and they're brightly colored. They have spots on it's actually the neck shield, but it looks like the face, and those spots can look like eyes. So kids love ladybugs. Farmers for centuries have revered ladybugs because they know that they will control the pests in their field. If you look across cultures, most languages have a name for ladybugs, and in almost all cultures they're considered good luck, and there's good reason for that.
So, do you remember the first ladybug that you ever saw?
I do.
Tell me about it.
When I was young, we had woods and fields behind our house, and we had sort of a crowded house, and so I would often go off on adventures, and I can remember sitting and eating my lunch in the woods and finding ladybugs on the plants. And I also found one of the first bugs that I remember having a really positive interaction with was a walking stick, which they look like little sticks until they start to move. But I have always myself had at a sort of visceral level, I guess, had a positive reaction to ladybugs. And I would say it's because of the science, but no doubt that had some part of the reason why I've spent so much of my focus on that for the last 10 years or so.
So what is your favorite thing about a ladybug?
I think my favorite thing about ladybugs is that this is going to seem unusual maybe, but they are so effective at limiting the pests that would just destroy plants.
So they're like a good guy.
They are a good guy. Yes, that's exactly right. Imagine your Marvel heroes. I mean, that's essentially what ladybugs are for real. And if you didn't have ladybugs and other predators, if somehow, again, not to use the Marvel analogy, but if you could snap your fingers and the ladybugs would be gone, we very quickly, first we'd use way too many pesticides because we'd be trying to control, but we couldn't keep up, and eventually our crops would fail because most pests that could become problems are nipped in the bud well, that'd be a plant thing. They're stopped from becoming problems by the action of the ladybugs.
So tell me about the 9-spot ladybug and what we know so far, and why is it lost?
Yeah, those are the questions that we've been wrestling with for a while. The 9-spot is a native ladybug. It was in years past, up until the early 80s, one of the, say, top 3 most common ladybugs in North America. And it was so common that when New York State decided that they wanted to have a state insect symbol, and they allowed 4th graders to choose which one it would be, the choice was the 9-spot ladybug. And so, but by the time the legislation went through, it was already on the decline. And we suspect that the reason why it declined was because there were other ladybugs, like its close cousin, the 7-spot ladybug, which is from Asia and Europe. And then later, the Asian ladybug were introduced, and they were introduced to control pests, but they may have had a side effect of also excluding a lot of the native species. And so part of what we're interested in is this decline in native species, because we have a lot less ladybug diversity than we used to, and I think we all sort of have a sense of the importance of diversity in the human sphere, but it's important for ladybugs too, because they each do their job, which is to eat pests and protect our crops. They each do that just a little bit differently. And so if you have a diverse set of ladybugs all doing their particular job in their particular way, you get the best pest suppression. And that means you lose the least crops, and you have to use the least amount of pesticide.
So when you say 9-spot, 7-spot, these are the black dots on the back of the ladybug?
Correct. I sort of lapsed into ladybug speak. So they're in the same genus. They're 2 different species. And they have a sort of split spot right up towards the front, towards the head, and then the 7-spot has 3 on each side, 9-spot has 4 on each side. And they occupy very similar habitats. And so when the 7-spotted one came in and started to become, it was brought in to control the Russian wheat aphid. So when it came in and was brought in for that purpose, the 9-spot and several other native species really started to decline, to the point where it is considered in New York a species of special conservation concern, and our neighbors to the north in Canada have actually declared it an endangered species.
Huh, how about that? Well, if anyone listening does see a ladybug, are there instructions that they should follow?
Yeah,
do you prefer
absolutely.
A close-up picture? Do you want to see it on a plant? What are the instructions?
Well, so one of the aspects that really lends ladybugs to this sort of citizen science project is that, unlike a lot of insects, in fact, a lot of other organisms, just a middling, decent picture of a ladybug allows us to identify most of it. The spotting pattern is so characteristic that with all the pictures we get in, and most of these aren't destined for the cover of National Geographic, they can be blurry, they can be one side or the other, but they're symmetrical. So really, any picture that you get is going to allow us to make an identification. And what helps us a lot is we have that species, and then if you can tell us where and when you collected it, and if you want, you can give us some more information about what was the weather like, what kind of a habitat were you in. All those things help us. They're all little points that help us fill in the picture of where are they now, what sort of plants do they prefer. That's one of the most important things that we call our volunteers spotters. And one of the things that our volunteer spotters have really figured out over the last few years is they've really helped us know what are the types of plants that ladybugs prefer, what ones attract them in and nurture them.
So you take the picture, and then you text it to lostladybug.org.
Right. You actually can upload it straight from the website. You'll enter your information, and it'll say sort of drag your picture over here, and it'll take it right in and send it to our expert that will identify it.
Okay, so the first step is find the ladybug, take the picture. Second step, go to lostladybug.org, follow instructions.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Yeah, that's
so
exactly
what are you
it.
learning so far at the Lost Ladybug Project?
Well, so some of the things that we've learned are that the native species in North America have declined since the sort of early 80s, we'll say. And two foreign species, the seven-spotted and the Asian, multicolored Asian ladybug is its common name, those two have not just in North America, but here specifically, have just started to expand, and their numbers have grown, and they've sort of taken over. And now they are the most common ladybugs in North America. And in fact, the Asian one is now the most common ladybug across the world. And it's unprecedented in that it makes up 50% of all ladybugs in the world are now this one species.
So why has the Asian ladybug been able to decimate the American ladybug?
That is an excellent question, and we think it was, say, we'll take the 9-spot as an example. It was in the same habitats as the 7-spot, and the 7-spot grows just a little bit faster and gets just a little bit bigger, and so it can outcompete the 9-spot. And so then the 9-spot gets sort of relegated to these habitats which are okay, but not quite as good. And then after some of them had declined, the Asian ladybug came in, and it's even larger, and it has an interesting characteristic in that if you've ever seen ladybugs in your house, those are almost undoubtedly the Asian ladybug. And so natives overwinter out in the soil, the base of trees, and amongst some leaves. The Asian ladybug overwinters in people's houses or other buildings. And those two things, the sort of size, the fact that they can go in such a wide variety of habitats, and that they overwinter in houses have given them a sort of leg up.
So essentially what happened was they consumed the food that the American ladybug was supposed to consume, and therefore died off because it couldn't get any food.
Yeah. So not only did they outcompete, but if you raise them together, they will eat the American ones because they grow enough faster that first they eat all the aphids and then they'll eat the ladybugs themselves.
But what kind of pests does the ladybug eat?
Their favorite food is aphids, which are the little green or yellow or sometimes black creatures that just suck the life out of plants. They suck the phloem, and they're sort of squishy, and they can reproduce incredibly quickly. And so that's one of the main things that ladybugs like. But almost any insect that you can imagine in its egg stage or in its immature stage, when maybe it's a little caterpillar, ladybugs will eat all those. And they can be effective at a really wide range of insects that they can control.
How long does a ladybug live?
In the field, they probably live mostly on average like 1 year, and so they'll live a year and then they'll go through the winter as adults, and then they'll have offspring the next year. We don't think that many make it past 2. It's possible, especially in the tropics, that some in the lab they can live multiple years, but in the field they probably don't make it that long.
So, as a kid, I used to keep a little jar of insects and I'd have the ladybugs in the jar for a while. If you do that, how long should they be in the jar before they are damaged?
So they don't need a whole lot of air. If you're talking a decent-sized jar, there's enough air in there for them for a long time, especially if you open it periodically. But they are going to need something to drink, and then eventually they're going to need food, and that can be they'll feed on little bits of raisin, and if you have like some bee pollen or something, they'll eat that. But eventually they're going to need prey, like an aphid and so you can have them in there for a long time as long as you sort of feed and water them. They can be good certainly for days and longer if you have the right food.
So, Professor Losey, we've created a new thing for ladybugs. Ladybugs as pets.
Yeah, it's true. We offer advice on you can start your own sort of ladybug colony by planting fava bean. They're big beans that grow up into really healthy plants. And if you can get some aphids, and we're looking into a program where we could maybe send you some aphids and some ladybug eggs, and you can rear your whole family of ladybugs right there, like an ant farm.
So then how do you introduce these so-called house-raised ladybugs into the fields?
Well, what we do is we can send them out in any stage. So whether they're still larvae, which are the little sort of crawler stage that most people wouldn't recognize as ladybugs, or adults. And what we try to be sure to do is to release them back in the same region that they were collected from. So even if they're the same species, the ones out west are maybe different from the ones in the east.
Yeah, right. So you just put them on the ground, or?
Yeah. And that's part of what we do in the ladybugs in the garden is usually not so much on the ground as we will carefully place them, or volunteers will, right onto plants. And they'll crawl right onto a leaf and they'll go and do their thing.
Oh, well.
And they've done really well.
Well, Professor Losey, I wish you all the best with the Ladybug Project.
Thank you.
And I hope people get their phones, take pictures of the ladybugs they see, and send the pictures your way.
Me too.
Okay, that's lostladybug.org. To find out more and to send your ladybug pictures, visit lostladybug.org. Thanks a lot, John.
Thank you.
Ladybugs have important jobs. Ladybug, ladybug, ladybug. Eating aphids that destroy our crops. Ladybug, ladybug.
Thank you for listening to American Voices here on my YouTube channel. For more interviews celebrating the goodness and creativity of the American people, click the subscribe button below.